Hi everyone, I am Tim Hatton and welcome to Hatton Consulting's first video blog. We're going to use this form of communication in hopes that you find it more effective and fun. And there's quite a bit that we would like to chat about using the video blogs. But most importantly, I want to let you know that we're always trying to reach out to our clients and find out what is on your minds, because we get busy in the office and we're focusing on what we believe to be important, but it's just very, very important that we simply ask you. And that is what I did a little while back with an email question. What were your top 3 concerns given the current global economic environment? And it was a really great exercise because we got several responses from many of our clients. And so what I'd like to do today is to address kind of how I've boiled your responses down to 3 areas, and I'm going to take some time today to address the first part of that. Now, what I found when I really went through and I was kind of analyzing the responses and trying to put together my response to the responses was my response was quite long. So I'm going to break things down, and today I'm going to go through the first segment. And thank you all for participating. So I'm going to first chat about the first or the 3 things that I've boiled your responses down to. And the first one is global debt. A lot of you are very concerned about what's going on in Europe and what is going on here in the United States from a government and total debt situation. So we'll address that. And then you're all very concerned about the possibility of inflation. And then in a future segment, I'm going to define inflation and get very detailed about how we view that. And then thirdly, a lot of people have some uncertainty as to the general economy and what's going on, but they want to make sure that their portfolio is built properly. And it's a wonderful question, and we try to address that continuously, but we're going to talk about how our portfolios are structured again in kind of the alternative world. What are good alternative investments, and what are some of the alternative investments that we think that we should stay away from? But today what I'm going to focus on is the global debt situation. And we've spoken about this in the past, but again, just want to give a little bit of an update. And the first number that I'd like to bring up is that, yes, the debt situation in the world has really exploded. We're up around 200 trillion, that's with a T, dollars in overall debt. And that's up from 80 trillion in 2002. That's a 12% annual increase versus an annual increase in the gross domestic product of the world of 4%. So debt has exploded. It is creating problems, and we really do need to be paying attention to it. Now, globally, there's lots of problems, and Europe is front and center, and Greece in particular. And really the basics are that governments have made promises, and they've done some things to try to rectify certain things like the housing market, and especially in Spain. But again, in Greece, they've got a lot of promises that were made to the citizens that the government just simply cannot keep. And things there have gotten really bad because they can't borrow and they can't print money, essentially. So there is no money to make good on these promises to the citizens. So they've got some problems over there. And I view the Greece situation actually is kind of a good thing, because essentially what's happening there is happening in a lot of places around the world. And it's going to be a good test case for us to learn from. So there's a lot of good things that are going on in Greece simply from that point of view. I do feel badly for the people that were made the promises and they made plans based on those promises, but that's what we're all up against here, okay? Here in the United States, let's frame what we're looking at as far as our debt picture. And for fiscal 2012, the U.S. government spent $3.8 trillion. They took in the form of total tax revenues, 2.5 trillion. So we ran a deficit of 1.3. And as you all well know, to get that 1.3, we have to borrow it. And so that's what we're doing. But here's what's important to understand. There's really three parts to the government's budget. There are mandatory programs, there are discretionary programs, and then there's the interest on the debt. The mandatory programs are Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, again, the promises that the government has made, and these things must be paid. That's why they're called mandatory. But the mandatory obligations of the government this past year were $2.5 trillion. That was the entire revenue base that the government brought in. The discretionary programs, that's really the normal functions of government. The courts, the prisons, Department of Education, agriculture, and the interest on the debt that we've accumulated, that is around $16 trillion. So the normal functions of government, we had to borrow every single cent to run that. That is, I think, very, very important to note, because at some point something's going to give. We don't have crystal balls. We don't know how things are going to work out. But I think the really important thing to pay attention to try to get an idea of how much trouble is on the horizon, is it here today? Because there's a lot of the doom and gloom people out there. Stansberry Investment, some of you I've spoken to about, they put out a video last year saying that the dollar was going to crash, and it really did scare a lot of you. But they said that that was going to happen last year. It didn't, and now they have some other things that are saying it's going to happen this year, among other people. But I think focusing on one particular number will give us an idea of the type of potential trouble we may be in. And that is the percentage of government revenues that it takes to make good on the interest of the debt that we owe. So we have $16 trillion, and this past year, the interest on that debt was $250 billion. That represents 10% of government revenues went towards making good on the interest on the debt. I really don't know what is a tipping point number. Is 10% revenue of the revenues that the government has to pay going towards servicing that debt? Is that a bad number? Well, think about your own personal situations, and you can run those numbers through your head. And at this point, we're really not in trouble yet, but we have to be careful. And here's why we have to be careful. The government, through quantitative easing and some other government programs, has pushed interest rates down very low, and they've been very effective at getting interest rates low. Many of you know, because it's troubling when you look at your savings, you're literally getting zero. The 5-year Treasury today is paying less than 1%, and the 10-year Treasury is paying 1.5%. Now, the good news for the government is by driving down interest rates, the interest expense is lowered. The average interest rate that the government is paying on the whole $16 trillion or so of debt is 2.2%. So think of the government as having a $16 trillion mortgage. It's paying 2.2% today. Well, what does that look like relative to history? The 5-year Treasury note, going back to the early 60s, has averaged almost 6.5%. Now, let's think about the government, and if their mortgage of $16 trillion was going to reset, like happened to so many Americans with their home mortgages, and it was going to go to the historical average. If it jumped to 6.5% or so, that's a tripling of the interest expense, and suddenly we could be paying 30% of the government's revenue could be going to servicing the debt. That is a high number, and that we would be in very serious trouble at that point, because it crowds out monies for the social programs and for the regular functions of government. So that is the number that I'm paying attention to, and I think that we all should be paying attention to. we've obviously have a situation where we've got to close that gap. Now, I don't want to get into all the technicalities and how we do that because that can get a little bit touchy. But we do need to pay attention, and we can't kick this can down the road any further. We've got to get this fixed because we are adding $1 trillion to the debt or more every year. And under any type of plan that has been proposed by any of the current administration or possible future administrations, they are all adding to the debt. No one has a plan right now where that $16 trillion number stops going up. All right, so that's what I'm going to leave us with today, and that's the important number that we're paying attention to. Now, what I'm going to get into in the next segments is I'm going to talk about inflation. Really, what is inflation? Because people have misunderstood really what inflation is and the true definition of it. I'm going to talk about the 4 economic environments that exist: prosperity, inflation, deflation, and recessions. I'm going to get into defining those. It's very important to understand those in the realm of how we invest. And then also very important, I'm going to talk about expected rates of return. Many of you in your responses said you're a little bit concerned about the low returns. So I'm going to calculate from a mathematical standpoint what we believe are going to be the expected rates of return, because it's very important to manage your expectations about portfolio performance. And then I'm going to finish up with a segment on alternative investments. And what are the good alternative investments that we're currently using? What are some of the alternative investments that are out there that we're not using, and why? Because there are some things out there that I know a lot of you may have been reading about or looking at, and we want to make sure that you're understanding why we use what we use and why we don't what we don't. So, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to watch this today. Please give us some feedback on how this goes, and I look forward to coming back with a second segment. And in the meantime, enjoy your day.